Rocky Top Insider presents the RTI Lowdown with Bob Baskerville and Chris Lowe.
Welcome. It's time for another edition of the RTI Lowdown. I'm Bob Baskerville, joined as always by my good friend and very knowledgeable dude, Chris Lowe from On3 Sports. Chris, how you doing, man?
Well, great, Bob. It's good to be with you. Sunday night, and sort of a different type of Sunday night as we're sort of right in the middle now of that crossover season. You know, football coming to an end, at least until the postseason, and hoops getting cranked up. But a lot to talk about, obviously.
Definitely so. We'll get to it here in a second. We appreciate you watching and listening. If you're watching us, you're checking us out on the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel. Do us a favor, make sure you like and subscribe if you're watching us there. We appreciate the support. You might be listening to us as a podcast too, and that's absolutely great. We're pretty much available wherever you get your podcasts, so make sure, if you haven't done it already, to download us there too. This episode is brought to you by the Tate Insurance Group. If you're in the market for a great locally based insurance professional to help you with your home, car, life coverage, you name it, you don't need to look any further. It's the Tate Insurance Group, and we certainly appreciate their partnership with the Lowdown. Got a good show coming up today. A little overview of what we'll be discussing. A look at the college football playoff field. The field of 12 is set. Who ended up on the outside looking in, and who has the most favorable path to Miami? We're going to talk about that, some of the behind-the-scenes machinations, all of that. Meanwhile, the Tennessee Vols get their bowl assignment, and it's a familiar destination. How are we feeling about another Music City Bowl date in Nashville? National Early Signing Day came and went for college football, but as far as the Vols and how they did, it looks like they fared well, but there are still a couple question marks, namely, where in the world is Legend Bay? And Tennessee basketball. We sat here a week ago talking about we had a big week upcoming. Well, that week turned out to be a rough one. And it leaves us wondering what this season will really look like for Rick Barnes and the boys. So we'll discuss that. But first, topic A tonight. After a topsy-turvy regular season, college football moves into postseason mode with the rollout of the field of 12 for the college football playoffs. And it feels like we're left with more questions than answers in this second go-round for the CFP. Chris, the Power Four Conference Championship games didn't disappoint on Saturday. Texas Tech took care of business against BYU, beating them for the second time this season. Georgia absolutely trucked Alabama. And then we wrapped up the evening with some really tight games. A classic in the Big Ten as Indiana shocks the world and Ohio State to take the title in the Big Ten and the number one seed in the playoffs. But possibly the most consequential game on Saturday happened in the ACC when 5-loss Duke stunned Virginia to claim the ACC crown and present the selection committee with an enormous dilemma today as they set that field of 12, Chris.
Yeah, it's I thought last night in talking to people, I was in Indianapolis and talking to people there at the Big Ten and other colleagues of mine, that this today was going to be probably the selection Sunday. And granted, like you said, Bob, this is only the second year of the 12-team field, but felt like this would be the Sunday since the playoffs started back in 2014 that created the most angst, the most venom, people mad, ready to blow up the whole playoff system and start over. And that is right. And it's we've seen some things today, unprecedented. Notre Dame says, you know what? We're not in the playoff. We're not going to play the bowl game.
Yeah.
Keep your bowl. We'll sit at home and do whatever you do in South Bend in December or January. They're out. You've got two group of 5 teams in. I never thought in a million years, and this is nothing against Bob Chesney and that James Madison team. I never thought in a million years I'd see a team from the group of 5 who didn't have a Power 4 win get in the playoff. But yet here we are. Tulane, a second group of 5 team in. Alabama gets in despite being boat raced in the SEC championship game, as you alluded to, by Georgia. Miami gets in when, 3 weeks ago, I guess it was, when they did the Tuesday unveiling of the weekly rankings. I think they were, at 1.45 spots behind Notre Dame.
Right.
And here they get in. So I really believe it depends on where you're looking at this from. What's your vantage point? And this is what I can say most definitively, Bob. The inclusivity caveat that has been a part of this playoff system has sort of screwed it up. And I'm not saying that inclusivity is bad. I think there is a spot for group of 5 teams or a team, because otherwise, if you're the Tulanes, the Boise States of the world, or Memphis, James Madison, why are you playing if you've got no shot to be in the playoff unless you have your own playoff?
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to get to that point. Maybe we see some type of first 4 type deal, or a game similar to basketball where the 2 highest ranked group of 5 teams play for a spot, let's say in an expanded field, in a 16-team field. Well, then there's 15 teams that are going to get in, and then the 16th is the winner of that quote-unquote play-in game between the 2 group of 5 teams. Because, listen, I saw Notre Dame. I understand the people that say that, they didn't play a great schedule, they didn't beat anybody. I get that, but I saw them live. That is a good football team. They would be, I guarantee you, if you talk to Vegas people right now and you line them up 1 through 12, they'd be favored over half the field.
Yeah.
They're a really good team, playing well, but you got to look at resumes too. So it's the system that exists right now makes it very difficult for the committee, because you got to have, as I said, you got to have the group of 5 team in there. That's part of the language in picking the playoff team, but it's not the 12 best team. And I think that's where we all, no matter again what side of the fence you're on, when you say we're gonna finally get together, we're gonna get the 12 best teams, we're gonna play it off on the field. Well, that's not really true. It's not the 12 best teams. It's sort of the teams that, under this current format and under this current system, that they can best justify to be in that final 12 field.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you just said there. I mean, it's kind of a mess, and I've been talking about this a lot. I talked about this last year when they were putting together the first field of 12. I talked about it in the off season on the radio, and I'm talking about it again. It's like, I just wish there was something that was, we poke a lot of fun at the college basketball tournament selection experience, and it at least feels like it's more data driven or something, because I mean, you talk about quad 1 wins and quad 2 wins, etc. We don't really have anything like this here. It's just based on the gut of the selection committee, right? And here's the thing. You and I were exchanging texts about this yesterday when Alabama, after it was at halftime of that Alabama Georgia game, and I think I said to you, I was like, man, if this continues, like if this ends up as a shutout, where does that put Alabama? And you responded, and you turned out to be right. You were like, I just don't see them keeping Alabama out. Because you were saying they don't like the concept of, losers in a conference championship,
right,
not getting there. However, BYU, they're out.
Right.
Virginia, they're out. And I know those conferences are held in a different light than the Big Ten and the SEC. I get all that. But that's the point. It's all kind of perceptual. And so in this case, look, I'm not stumping for Duke to be in the field of 12. That's not my point. You've got a team like Notre Dame that ends up getting the raw end of the deal, basically. And I agree with you. They're better than probably close to half of the teams in that field.
Or at least as good. At least
as good. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, they lost 2 games by a total of 4 points, and ironically, 2 teams that are in the playoffs. So I don't know. I mean, the way, and say what you want, and this is not me being a Tennessee fan with Alabama bias. I've got family members who are big Alabama fans, etc. I do feel like I was pretty shocked today. I knew that the selection committee was probably going to have to be in a tough spot to decide between either Alabama or Notre Dame. And some said Miami, but I thought it's really going to come down to those 2, in my opinion. Because that's a tough one, man. Those are enormous brand names, but I still felt, I bet you Alabama wins out. And sure enough, they did. I was kind of thinking that would happen, but then I was still shocked when they announced that they were in, and then Notre Dame was out. I figured when they were revealing the brackets and I saw Alabama get revealed then I was like, oh, that's bad news for Miami. I really felt that was the case. But I guess, again, the committee felt they could not have a 12-team field without an ACC representation. And so by Duke winning, they were able to settle this by putting an at-large in with Miami, who's a good team. I mean, I'm not saying they're not necessarily deserving, but Notre Dame's more deserving. I'm really surprised we've got a 3-loss team in there. That's all.
Yeah, and a 3-loss team, though, that lost in its conference championship game. And that was sooner or later that was going to happen. You were going to have a 3-loss team that lost in its title game. I think two or three things on Bama. Bama had the best win of anybody in college football this year when they won at Georgia. They also had a very bad loss. I say very bad. They didn't lose to a group of 5 team with a losing record, but they lost to a Florida State team by 2 touchdowns. It was not a very good team this year.
Yeah.
So if you want to be fair, look at it both ways. Their metrics were probably, and their resume were probably as good or better than anybody in the field. The number of teams they beat who were ranked in that committee's top 25 when they beat them. I think at one point won 4 straight games against ranked teams. They didn't play their best football, though, the last 3-4 weeks of the season. I didn't think, Bob, they were nearly as good as they were in the midway part of the season. I think they got in for 2 reasons. I know there's always conspiracy theorists out there, but if you say they got in because of their brand, then okay, then why would Notre Dame not get in because of their brand? So they got in because of their overall resume, that they won a lot of games against really good teams, solid teams, and they had the best win on the road against the number 3 overall seed, and they got to the SEC championship game. They were the number 1 seed. And I think this is the thing that someone said to me, someone who worked in the Big Ten office last night, that I sort of left Lucas Oil Stadium about 1:30 in the morning this morning with this sort of implanted in my brain. Bama was the number 1 seed going into the SEC tournament or playoff championship game. They were the number 1 seed.
Right.
They were going to put 4 other SEC teams in over Bama that finished behind them in the regular season. They weren't going to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of what it came down to.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. So the field lays out as follows. You were up in Indianapolis. You got to see that wild game between Indiana and Ohio State. It's unbelievable, again, for me growing up in the state of Indiana. Not an Indiana University fan, but I'm a fan of great stories, and this is one of them. And Indiana is the number 1 overall seed. Unbelievable that it's happened in just 2 seasons. Before Kurt Signetti got there, that was the losingest Power 5 conference team in college football in the history of college football. Now he's surpassed Northwestern by virtue of the 2 seasons they've had there under Signetti's watch now. But, I mean, it's an amazing story. They're the 1 seed. Ohio State only drops to 2, Georgia at 3, and Texas Tech at 4. So those are the 4 teams that get that first round bye. Pretty stout set of 4 teams there, CeeLo, I'd say. And in Texas Tech, I got to watch them at length yesterday. That's a good team too. I mean, those are all teams that could go in and win the whole thing.
Yeah. Welcome to the new world of college football, Bob. 3 of the top 6 teams are Indiana, Ole Miss, and Texas Tech.
Right.
Now, think if you had told somebody, when Georgia and Alabama were running roughshod everybody from, say, 2015 to 22, when those 2 teams were either winning it every year or playing each other.
Right.
And you would have said, say, coming out of COVID in 21, that, all right, we're going to have a playoff. It's going to expand here in a few years. And we see the teams, 3 of the top 6 teams are going to be Texas Tech, Ole Miss, and Indiana. Think of the money. If I had your money, that we could go to Atlantic City and wager, what kind of odds we'd have gotten on that? Think about that. It's just a new world, man. It is a new world of college football. You better be able to hit it right in the portal and not just spend a lot of money in the portal. You got to have a lot of money to spend, but you got to hit it right. And You look at those kids on Indiana's roster, a lot of them came with, with Kurt from James Madison. Tons of those guys did. The corner did, D'Angelo Pons, who they manned up on Jeremiah Smith. And Smith had a couple of big gains early, but he didn't do a lot down the stretch, and they played a lot of man coverage on him. Their pass rusher came from there, Aiden Fisher, their linebacker. tons of their best players, and then they've been able to develop kids. Their defensive line, and that's where it always starts. Outside of having a guy who's the ultimate playmaker at quarterback, and Mendoza's really good. He'll be a pro. He'll go in the top 10, 15 picks in the draft. Their defensive line, I've seen them twice live, and I've seen a lot of good SEC defensive lines in my day. They may not have a bunch of top 10, top 15 picks, but their front seven are legit. They're fast. They get off the football. They don't miss tackles. They take great angles. They gang tackle. How many times did you see Ohio State have a ball carrier or somebody who looked like he was going to maybe hit a crease, and a guy makes a shoestring tackle last night, or they get on the sidelines with 2 or 3 guys? They are a good football team, and coaching still matters.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. You better have a coach who resonates with his players, who develops, who could get those guys to play at their maximum level. It's a great story. And I thought in baseball we might see stories like a Coastal Carolina winning a national title, which they did. You saw in basketball a few times, over the last few years. You saw George Mason get to the Final Four. Loyola gets to the Final Four. Way back, Butler almost beats Duke at the buzzer. Those stories happen in college basketball. But I didn't think we'd see this in football. But NIL and the transfer portal have totally changed the game.
Absolutely. And I thought I read that was the first time all season that Ohio State was held to under 300 yards total offense. And I didn't see this one coming. I know Indiana's good, but I still felt Ohio State could win this one comfortably, 2 scores, as a matter of fact. After what I saw their defense do to Michigan the weekend before, I was just really, really stunned. And, Cignetti, smug and all that. But, I did love what he said last night after they won. He goes, I got to get these guys humble now in the next 3 weeks.
Right. That'll be a challenge. They'll be tough.
Yeah, absolutely. The rest of the field, number 5 seed is Oregon, and they're going to be hosting James Madison in a first-round game. So James Madison, big story there with Curt Cignetti's successor, Bob Chesney, coaching, and he's getting ready to move on to become Nico Iamaleava's new coach at UCLA, provided Nico stays there. Number 6 seed, Ole Miss. Ole Miss, I think, got moved up, even with Lane Kiffin leaving. I thought they were 7 last week, but I'd have to go back. They dropped
to 7 at one point. Yeah, I don't know if they were last week, but
yeah. So they're going to be hosting Tulane in the first-round game. This is all coming up, I think, the weekend of the 20th of December, so a couple weeks from now. Miami, who we mentioned earlier, they'll be traveling to take on the number 7 seed. Miami's the 10 seed, and they'll be playing in College Station against the Texas A&M Aggies, who are the 7 seed. And then this one's going to be interesting, a rematch. Alabama going to Norman, the number 9 seed Crimson Tide against the number 8 seed Sooners in the first round in Norman. By the way, the winner of that will be playing Indiana. So we got that second wave of games. There's some that are pretty good in this first round, I'd say. Some have my interest, some not so much. But, man, the second round could be off the hook if things go according to plan.
Yeah, you got some rematches to Tulane and Ole Miss. Ole Miss beat the stuffing out of Tulane earlier. Oklahoma and Alabama, which was a really good football game. Alabama had some really bad mistakes that cost them in that game and lost at home. But, there's a part of me, Bob, that I want to see. Granted, I've cut my teeth uncovering the SEC, but I've seen Indiana and done several things on that team this year. Man, I don't need any more proof.
Yeah,
that they are a good, tough, resilient, smart football team.
Yep.
They've got receivers. I mean, they won last night. Remember this? They won last night without their best receiver. Omar Cooper went down second play of the game. He's their most productive receiver. Now, Elijah Surratt's a great football player too. He'd been dealing with injuries the last few weeks. He made the touchdown catch, but they played the whole game without Cooper.
Yeah.
Their top playmaker receiver. I want to see Indiana. I want to see Indiana play against an SEC team. And just because, we haven't really seen it, there's still skeptics out there. I hear all the time from my buddies, Indiana, if they played anybody in the SEC worth a flip, they'd get killed. I'm not buying that. I'm not buying it. So I want to see it on the field and see what happens.
Yeah, I talked to some Indiana fans late last night. The team they're scared of most, and it looks like they would only play them if it got to the championship game. They're scared of Georgia, and with
Yeah.
good reason. I mean, Georgia looked fantastic yesterday, but yeah, I agree with you. I think they've proven it. What a gutsy call by Signetti and gutsy play by Mendoza. What on 3rd and long late in the game, and that
Right.
Charlie Bennett kid who's from Nashville. Gus Johnson reminded us of that about 36 times during the game. They just got, yeah, man, it's just guys that find a way, right? That's all. He's put together a really interesting bunch, and he's got them believing. So
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be interesting to watch. Now, what I will say is all of this that we've talked about, I think it leaves some big questions regarding the college football playoff moving forward. Now, there's already been talk about expansion of the field, right? Does that happen as soon as next season? Because it could expand to 16, 14 teams, you name it, next season. That's one question, Chris. Does that happen? The other question is there's a lot of chatter today about do conference championship games go away entirely? That's another topic of discussion. And then the last one is, Notre Dame's crying the blues. Like you said, they've already made their statement. They're not going to play in a postseason bowl. If I'm the Notre Dame administration, it does make me wonder because they've had many, many offers to do this, but do they finally acquiesce and join a conference? That's how you put an end to some of this kind of craziness. They've kind of wanted it both ways, right? They've wanted that flexibility. They're kind of tied to the ACC, but they're really not a member of the conference and all this other stuff. I think those are some of the things that are staring us in the face. And then I'm going to hit you with one more, and then I'm going to shut up for a minute. And that is, are we reaching a moment in time? You talked a little bit about this earlier about kind of maybe some sort of play-in format, but there's also been all this talk about a super league that they're wanting to create. That's going to take years and years and years to formulate, where there's the potential of, promotion and, similar to what they do in soccer, basically, promotion, relegation, all of those things. Could we not see a future where there's a format where there's a college football playoff? And I'd be ideal keeping it with 12 teams where it's the Power Four conferences. And then you do another field that might be similar to the FCS that's been working well for so long. That's either 12 or 16 teams, hell, even 8, where it's the group of 5. And you take those teams and let's just call it what it is. I mean, I know this story with James Madison and Tulane being in there. That's wonderful. They're not going to get past a first round game, man. They're just not. So why not put them in a pool where they could go and they could win a championship? I don't know. What are your thoughts on all this stuff?
I'll start there. Better yet, let them play.
Yeah.
Let those two play, and the winner gets in.
Yeah, that's
I do think there's a spot. I mean, if you're or you have a separate playoff, which you just sort of outlined. Let's go back to Notre Dame. Notre Dame, they continue even after this last deal where they didn't get in. Their AD says they're more committed to ever to staying independent. And they feel like it gives them more flexibility. They've got their own TV contract. They do have a pretty sweet deal, as you point out, with the ACC. I think they play 5 games every year in football. They're a member in every other sport. Sometimes people forget that. They're a member of the ACC in baseball and basketball. So there is a pretty good agreement there between Notre Dame and that conference. So I don't think this will push them away from being independent. I just think they feel like they're Notre Dame and their independence is unique. It's a novelty, and they feel like they can use that much more to their advantage than it hurts them. The playoff format, listen, we've only, in as much as everybody's squawking today, and I raised my hand. I'm weighed in too on it, yay and nay. This is still only 2 years of the 12-team format.
right.
And I think sometimes we're prone in the media, fans too, of overreaction. I mean, imagine that we in the media overreact to stuff. But it's just 2 years. Now, last year they tweaked it. They had that silly rule where the top 4 seeds had to be conference champions. Well, they got away from that, and this year, you're not. Imagine that this year. Well, it's sort of like last year. Ohio State would not be they'd be playing somebody in the first round.
Yeah.
So They got away from that. I think one way to get around this is just go to a straight seed. Are we ready for 16 teams this year? I don't know that, there were enough. I certainly think Vandy deserved a real look. Certainly Notre Dame. If you get past a group of 5 teams, but I know there's some people that are on the board, the playoff board, the president's board. Dr. Keenum at Mississippi State was the president of that board, and I know a year or two ago he proposed, let's just do a straight seed. Let's rank them one without regard to conference affiliation, who won a conference championship, who didn't. Let's just rank them 1 through 12 and let them play. And maybe this year it gets us closer to some type of format like that. When we go to 16, that will help some. If we had 16 this year, let's sort of look at that. Then Notre Dame gets in. Texas would have gotten in. And Vanderbilt, I think, would have been the last team, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I think they would have gotten in. Yeah.
They were 14. And, you look at Vandy, much like Notre Dame, Vandy's a team right now that I talked to a couple coaches in the league this week. Nobody really wants to play Vanderbilt right now.
No.
I mean, they're playing really good football. And they lost 2 games against 2 teams that are in the field. They lost to Alabama at Alabama, a game that they turned the football over. And so they're a team, I think, that certainly would have a chance to win a game. I don't know that they're a national championship team, but I think they could certainly make a little bit of noise. So 16, but then, you have other schools who think they should be in it. Duke lost 5 football games this year. I understand they won the ACC title, but that's getting back to the straight seeding proposal that I just outlined. I don't think just because you win a conference championship that there should be a seat at the table for you. Every conference not all conferences are created equal.
Right.
And conferences in different seasons aren't created equal. The SEC, listen, I know there's a lot of accusations out there about SEC bias. There was a time, and I'd be the first one to say it, that the SEC was very top heavy. From 15 to 22 or 23, it was Georgia, Alabama, Georgia. LSU won it all in 19 with a great football team. But these last couple of years, I don't know that there's been a great team in the SEC, but there have been a lot of teams, 8, 9, 10, and we've seen that play out on the field that can beat each other. And I think that's sort of what's happened, and I think that aligns a lot, Bob, with NIL and the portal. And the Big Ten, on the other hand, is sort of flipped. They've sort of become what the SEC was from 15 to 22 or 23. Ohio State and Indiana have been head and shoulders of everybody else in that league, and certainly in 23 when Michigan won it, they were right there with Ohio State. So they sort of had a lot, 3 or 4 teams right there at the top. Oregon was really good last year, but a big gap between them and everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking through it while you were talking about a 16-team field, and I think you're right. I think Notre Dame would be in, probably Brigham Young. Just given the losses they had were to Texas Tech.
Right.
And then the 2 SEC schools, that would make the field of 16, but there would still be some other schools raising their hand going, that's always going to happen, no matter what the size of the field is, right?
Look at the basketball tournament. Every year there's, 2, 3 teams? Well, how'd this team get left out? So it's going to happen.
Absolutely.
And let me say this, too. It's sort of apropos in a way. We lost, one of the more bigger figures in SEC history this past week, Roy Kramer dying. And I think Roy was 95 or 96. I lived out in Rarity Bay, right on the golf course there. I had a chance to visit with him many times. Sharp as a tack, man, right up to the end. And, he had his handprints are all over college football's postseason. He was the godfather of the BCS. He's the one that came up, Bob, with the SEC championship game. He found a loophole. Nobody was playing conference championships when the SEC started that in 92, and it immediately became a huge hit. And I remember visiting with Roy in the last, 3 or 4 years. He sort of that familiar chuckle of his. He said, well, they're still having a little controversy, aren't they? Trying to figure out who the national champion is. And he told me, when everybody was cursing the BCS, well, how can we have computers? We need people picking these teams. We need more of a human element. Well, now they're cursing the human element. And Roy said, there's never going to be a perfect system. College football is different than every other sport because it's just not apples to apples. You play different schedules, even within conferences. The conference schedules are sometimes imbalanced. You don't play conferences are different. It's not like pro football. It's you don't have as many teams that get in the tournament as college basketball. It's just different. He said there's always going to be controversy, and there's always going to be angst, and there's always going to be people calling for upheaval. And you know what? He's right. I think no matter what happens in the next couple of years, I don't know that they ever will get it just to the point to where everybody agrees this is the right system.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that'll be a raging conversation here for weeks to come. The playoffs will begin in about a little less than 2 weeks. We'll certainly be monitoring that. We're going to now in the back half of this show, we're going to start talking about our guys from Tennessee. We'll get back to that. But before we do that, I wanted to talk for a moment about our sponsor. That's the Tate Insurance Group. They are your local insurance team. They are proud to call East Tennessee home. And just like our Vols, they know what it takes to overcome obstacles, to give their all, and show true volunteer spirit for our community. From home and auto to business coverage, they provide personal service that you can count on. And again, they care about what you care about because this is where they live too. Tate Insurance Group, local, trusted, always in your corner, and right here at home. CeeLo's a proud, happy customer and supporter of Tate Insurance Group.
Absolutely. For many, many years now.
Yeah, I'm still I'm in discussion with them on something myself. It's been a good connection. They've been really good helping me out trying to figure out kind of next phase for some medical care.
The thing I like the best about them, I can call, it could be about anything. I need to tweak my kid's car insurance or, something. We've had to put a roof on our house a couple of years ago and because of some hail damage. Anyway, you call in there. And it's not like you got to call 2 or 3 times. They know exactly who you are. They pull up your file. They know exactly what you got. And it's, it's as you just said, it's they're like your buddy next door. They know you. They know what you got going on. And that to me has been the best part of my relationship with Scott Tate and his company.
Yeah. Now they seem like good folks, and I'm looking forward to continuing that conversation. But you got a glowing endorsement there from my guy CeeLo. All right, let's talk about Tennessee because we've spent the first half of the show talking about college football at large, and we've solved all their problems, I think. Well, maybe not, but it's always nice to say. But let's talk about the Vols because their season is not over. I know it's kind of a consolation prize that some people don't seem to care too much about, but they are going to be playing in a postseason bowl, and it is a familiar destination. The Vols are headed to Nashville to face Illinois in the Music City Bowl on December 30th. Kind of ironic since the Vols were just in Nashville last night, taking on Illinois in Music City for basketball. But this time it'll be football on December 30th. Quickly, very top line on Illinois. I don't know if you probably recall this, Chris, but, they started the season in the preseason polls near the top 10. There was a lot of optimism about Illinois football, but they ended up 8-4. They have some similarities to us, not just the 8-4 record, but they only really had one high-profile win on their schedule. They beat USC by 2 points. And I guess you could say Duke just because Duke ended up being the ACC champion. But in their big-time games against Indiana, Ohio State, even Washington, and then a down Wisconsin, those are their 4 losses, and they were all big losses. They were not close games. So I feel like for Illinois, this has been kind of a disappointing season for them as well.
Yeah, they got just hammered by Indiana, embarrassed really. The Wisconsin game was the one that it's the head scratcher. If they win that one 9-3, who they lost to? They lost to some good teams, but the Wisconsin one was a bad loss, and that team is pretty much the quintessential Brett Bielema type team. They're tough, they're physical. They had some injuries. Much like Tennessee, they had some key guys that miss a game. I don't know whether they're going to be in this bowl game. See, that's the thing now about bowls, Bob, and you know this. I mean, what kind of Tennessee team shows up? What kind of Illinois team shows up? Who's playing? Who's not? Who's opting out? There'll be a lot of that. There always is in these type of games, which is always hard to handicap. As we sit here, we just found out today that Tennessee and Illinois are playing. What are those teams going to look like when they show up at the stadium on game day?
Yeah.
Who's going to be in the lineup? Who's not? I look at this game, and I think a lot of coaches do. They may not come out and say it, but this type of game to me is almost your first spring scrimmage for next year. Now, I don't mean you put guys on the bench just because you want to take a look at a younger corner, or a younger right tackle, but you're going to have a lot of those guys that are playing because other guys are going to either be hurt or opt out. So you get a chance to see against a good team, against a solid team from the Big Ten, how those guys play. And I think that's more and more the way coaches look at some of these bowl games now. It used to be, it was a way to capture season and really sort of add momentum going into the offseason. I don't know that bowl games anymore are very indicative of what your season were because of just, they've just changed. Kids don't play in them anymore. They just don't. Very few of them do. And so I look at it more as a glimpse of, all right, who are some guys we'll get to see play in this game that you're going to see a lot more of next year for said team?
Yeah, I agree. And I will say this, Illinois is at least a new foe. I was very worried. What I did not want to see is if we were going to go to the Music City Bowl and then also have to face Iowa. With all due respect to Kirk Ferentz and Iowa, it's like we've played them a couple times in years past, and it's not exactly enthralling football. So we'll see. We'll see what it's like with Illinois. But
I think Vandy gets Iowa, right?
They do. Yeah, that's right. That's a good segue. We were the SEC has a bunch of other bowl assignments. You're right. Vandy is going to face Iowa in the ReliaQuest Bowl in Tampa, I believe that is, on New Year's Eve. Big game on New Year's Eve. I will be interested in this one, and that's Texas against Michigan in the Citrus Bowl. I think that should be an interesting game. Feels like Texas is kind of hitting their stride just a little too late, but that should be interesting to watch.
Yeah, that when I saw that matchup, that was one of the ones that I said, all right, that's obviously two brands, but Texas did play a lot better.
Yeah,
down the stretch. I still think Michigan's really talented and certainly on defense. They they held in there for at least half or a little bit more than half the game against Ohio State. Again, I just don't know how many guys are going to play, and that's why. Yeah, it's sort of I don't want to say it's a dirty little secret. It's just sort of the reality now of postseason bowl games. And we mentioned Notre Dame, Bob. Iowa State's not going to play in a bowl game. Kansas State's not going to play in a bowl game.
Yeah.
Both of those schools just lost their coaches. I think that's the biggest reason. And the coaches that are coming in, Colin Klein's coming back to Kansas State.
Yeah.
To coach, but he's the OC at Texas A&M, is going to stay there. I think there's half the teams. I think I counted this up coming back from Indy today. Half the teams in the playoff either have a head coach who's not going to be there, i.e., your good buddy Lane Kiffin, a head coach who has taken a job and is still going to take his team through the playoff, John Sumrall at Tulane, he's going to Florida, or they've got coordinators who've taken head jobs but are still going to hang around. I think both Oregon's coordinators have got head jobs. So again, you will talk about what's changed in college football, and people rant and rave about the calendar. The calendar is sort of screwed up, but in some ways it's part of the calendar is sort of what the coaches had wanted. Some of them anyway had voted for. Well, here we are with signing day just passed us, and you got the portal opening June or January the 2nd or 3rd, I think. And you got all these coaches who've been interviewing for jobs, and a lot of them now haven't already taken a job coaching their original team in the most important games they play all year. So it doesn't seem – it's not the way it's supposed to be. It's the way it is. And, I love the sport on Saturday. I mean, I've been somewhere just about every Saturday this fall, and I still love it. I love the everything around, part of the game. But man, some of the stuff around it, the calendar and coaches coming and going and players coming and going. I don't, not my favorite part of the sport. Let's
No.
just leave it at that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. This is where it gets interesting, by the way. Like LSU, I'm kind of surprised LSU didn't opt out as a team. But at the same time, you mentioned Kansas State and Iowa State. They're both facing $500,000 fines from the Big 12 for opting out. And so when I said earlier that Notre Dame needs to pony up and get into a conference, that's another benefit, right? They don't have that.
They don't
kind
worry
of
about
penalty.
anything.
Yeah, exactly. But
well, LSU didn't opt out, but their coach opted out.
Yes. Yeah. But
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
they're gonna no, that was good. They're gonna face Houston in the Texas Bowl on 12/27. I will likely not be watching that. Missouri going to the Gator Bowl on the 27th as well to take on Virginia. And then one more friend of the show and all around good guy, but because there are teams opting out, a team like Mississippi State, 5-7 Mississippi State, Jeff Levy's bunch, they're going to the Duke's Mayo Bowl on January 2nd of 2026, one of the last bowl games of the bowl season. They're going to take on Wake Forest. But if you're a Mississippi State fan, and I think that's a good step, they need to be, if they get that chance, they should be playing that game.
Well, there's different levels of want to.
Yeah.
At this time of year. Some of these teams don't want to play. You think those kids, and they would never come. You think those kids at Notre Dame want to go out and play in a bowl game right now after they got left out of the playoff? Heck no.
That's right.
A lot of these schools. I wonder where is Texas emotionally and mentally right now as they get ready to go play for a bowl game?
Mm-hmm.
Mississippi State, though, is on the other end of that spectrum, Bob.
Yeah.
This is like an extended spring practice for Jeff Levy in that program.
Yeah.
To be able to practice on campus for a while, to go to the bowl site. He played his young quarterback, Mario, in that last game against Ole Miss. So he'll have another game to play in and get ready for next year as they get ready for spring practice. So, yes, I think that is a great example of a team who should be pretty pumped to go play again and get a shot to finish the season well. And have a lot of young guys that maybe didn't get to play as much. They're going to get to play a lot of football.
Yeah. And I'm guessing Vandy's I bet you Vandy shows up too, right?
I would think.
They want to send a message to college football like, you made a mistake. We belong. And I get that. That'll be interesting to see. Real quick on Tennessee football to put a bow on things. Early national signing day was this past week. Tennessee, by and large, did well. They kept most of the guys that they set out to get and got verbal commitments from. They got them to sign on the dotted line. As a matter of fact, they thought they got one who flipped back to Tennessee from he was originally committed with us, then went to Ohio State. I'm talking about Legend Bay. And Chris, I don't know if you've heard anything. Where do we know the status of that dude? Is because then we made it sound like his mother and brother engineered the flip unbeknownst to him, and that he was probably going to end up back at Ohio State. And then it went silent. But I didn't know if you heard anything more.
I don't think, much like people asked me the week of Lane Kiffin saga, what's he going to do? I think it changed so much that, I quit guessing. So I'm the same way with this kid. And if there's always one. I can remember hearing his story, took me back to Dante Stallworth. I don't know if you remember Dante Stallworth's recruitment. He was a kid from Sacramento, great player, West Coast, and he was all over the map, just all over the map. And back then, of course, that was before the internet, before any recruiting coverage close to what we get right now. You actually were calling kids and trying to get on the phone. And I remember those of us covering Tennessee at that point, he drove us crying. I've kidded him since then about that he's on the West Coast, we're on the East Coast, and it just changed all the time. And I think I assume it's something like that. I know this is a deal with the mom, wasn't in lock and step with him where he wanted to go. And there's been all sorts of allegations that his signature was forged, and who knows what's true and what's not, but it sounds like it's pretty messy.
Yeah. And I think, I think Boy, Josh Heupel feels like he's got enough stuff swirling around him right now with, fan expectations, et cetera. There's part of me that thinks, I don't know, man, maybe a head for the hills on this one, or they probably know a lot more than we do in
Right.
terms of the behind the scenes. So we just got to trust them on this one and see what happens, I suppose. But Tennessee they had moved all the way up to number 5 in the composite rankings for the recruiting haul that they had. Without Bay, they dropped to 7, but still, that's the strongest recruiting class they've brought in over 10 years at this point.
Yeah, and they have beaten. I always remind people that when Butch Jones was here, they had, I think, a pair of top 5 classes nationally. So I've never gotten caught up in where a team ranks.
Yeah,
I think it's a gauge. I think it's a gauge, but it doesn't guarantee anything. It really doesn't.
Yeah,
and I think you could go back and look at the teams who've won national titles. Not so much anymore, though, with the portal NIL. I think we're going to see those things change. But over the last decade plus, teams that won national titles almost always ranked up there close in the top 10 per se in recruiting rankings. But what I look at is who do you go beat for players?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was, to me, the most impressive thing for Tennessee is they beat a lot of teams that they got to beat on the field for players,
right.
and at key positions. You get a receiver who everybody wanted. You get a quarterback who everybody wanted. I mean, to me, in this era of football, you better sign a quarterback every year.
Yeah.
The way those guys come and go. You just got to. It's hard. You can't keep 3. I understand that. But you just never know what's going to happen. And they went and got one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So I like the fact when I looked at their class, you saw a lot of guys they signed and flipped. You flipped a kid from Alabama to come to Tennessee.
Right.
But you saw a bunch of schools there on the top of those kids' lists who really wanted them, genuinely wanted them, that Tennessee was able to get them. So that tells me right now we evaluate it a year or two from now what the class was, but right now, as we look at it, that they did some good work this recruiting period.
Definitely so. Definitely so. And I know you've been hit up with it on a number of shows. It's been a topic on a number of my shows. We're not going to spend too much time on it. We're just going to trust in the process that something may have to happen with some sort of coaching staff changes, but that's up to Josh Heupel and, what he wants to do. I think a lot of us are clamoring for something that would represent some change because we feel like we see a lot, but, it'll be interesting to see if something does in fact happen.
Yeah, when coaching changes over the years, having covered this sport, sometimes fans and media just want to change just to have a change. Bobby Bowden used to always say they just want to hang it. They want to hang it,
Yeah.
in the town square at noon, make you feel better.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to make a coaching change, make one because you feel like you got a beat on somebody else you can bring in that you're going to better yourself. You're going to better the program.
Yeah.
Someone that you trust, someone that you think fits, someone you think's an upgrade. So, when people have asked me, do I think there's going to be changes? I think there will be. I don't think Josh is just going to go out there and start Xing guys from his staff because he feels like he needs to do that or someone's putting pressure on him. But if he can find people, and I know certainly Josh is a smart enough dude, and I've said this before, he's going to self-scout. He has self-scouted to find somebody he can bring in here that he thinks is going to make them better on either side of the football. There's no question he'll do that. But I don't think he's going to do it just to say, all right, everybody wanted me to make staff changes, so I made a few. I don't think that's going to be it at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, time will tell. We'll obviously be monitoring that. Let's put a bow on this thing, though, and talk a little bit about Tennessee basketball. We'll jump tracks here. You and I sat here when we did this show last week, and we talked about Tennessee basketball was entering a pretty pivotal week. Well, that pivotal week ended up with a pretty disappointing set of losses. The Vols had 2 big Power 4 games, potential quad 1 wins. First one was against Syracuse this past Tuesday night, which resulted in a pretty disappointing and inexplicable loss. It's a little distant now. It's been almost a week, so we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about that one. Everybody was disappointed, most notably Coach Barnes. Syracuse is better than they have been. We were saying that last week. They have improved, and they made life uncomfortable for, namely, Jacoby Gillespie and Nate Ament. They definitely had a target on those guys, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And we definitely saw it on Saturday night in Nashville. Top 15 showdown against the Fighting Illini of Illinois. Again, they're going to be our bowl opponent now in Nashville here at the end of the month. After an intense back and forth first half that saw the Vols ahead at halftime, Illinois makes halftime adjustments. That's a good team. Brad Underwood's a good coach. They turn out to be the right adjustments because they blitzed Tennessee in the second half on their way to a 75-62 win. Chris, your take on this, because this one, it was kind of like Kansas. I felt like after the first half of the Kansas game, I felt like, hey, we're in pretty good shape. We just got to close the deal. And then the wheels came off in the second half. It felt like we saw that even a little more magnified in this game against Illinois.
Yeah, the second half in all those losses really disappointing for Tennessee. They just didn't play well.
Yeah.
Didn't play smart, didn't play tough, turned the basketball over in costly parts of the game, didn't make shots when they needed to. And I think probably this last game, I know there's no probably to it, I know this last game probably what disappoints Rick Barnes more than anything is they did not get in Illinois' grill defensively like Tennessee always does. They did not play near to the standard defensively that Rick Barnes' teams always had. And I can promise you, I haven't been in the locker room, I haven't talked to Rick since that game, but I know that eats at him more than anything in this last game against Illinois, because this is not a team that to this point, and I think it's still going to grow a lot. I mean, think about what the conversation was coming out of the Houston game versus what it is now. This team's still got a lot of room to grow. It's a lot of young kids, but I don't think they're going to be the kind of team that is not a really good defensive team and expect to be a team that can make a deep tournament run. They're going to have to play in your face, gritty defense, make things happen on defense, get some points off their defense. And those are things that his teams have always done very well. And I don't know that we've seen that consistently this year. I think the second thing is Amit's just got to start making shots.
Yeah.
I mean, he's certainly capable. He's got a great handle. He's got length. He looks, very comfortable when he's handling the basketball. He's got a good looking stroke. He just hadn't made a lot of shots, Bob. He's gotten to the free throw line, made some free throws, but in the SEC, and I know that everybody on that staff has been working with him and telling him this, he's got to learn to play through contact. He's got to learn to absorb contact and make shots. And when he gets good looks, he's got to get it. He just looks off balance. He floats a little bit. He's got to be much more assertive at getting to the rim and finishing. Yeah. And I think he can get there. I'm not saying, I know everybody's like, well, boy, this guy's not, we paid all this money for him. He's a top 3 or 4 player in the country. Listen, he's got some serious skills. I mean, so let's wait and see where he is midway through the SEC season. And they need somebody else. When teams go after Gillespie the way they have, and they invariably are, you're exactly right. Tennessee's got to have somebody else on the perimeter and score.
Yeah.
They just got to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to be a long season because teams are going to bottle him up. They're going to they're going to say, you know what? If player X, player Y can beat us, go ahead. And I think the last thing I would say is inside, we've seen at times this year, guys, have big games, carry a couple games. Estrella did. Estrella's got to get healthy. Yeah. That's the thing with him. They just can't go a couple games and then play, then a couple games he's not. And some of that's just bad luck. It's not like that he doesn't want to be out there, but they need to be full strength there in the interior with him because he's a really good post scorer and can put pressure on the defense. But they just haven't been very consistent. They did not play very many good teams, until they got to Vegas. And then Rutgers, I don't think is very good. And they blew, but Gillespie was out of sight that game.
Yep.
And then they played against Houston. I think the way when they click and do the things that Rick wants them to do, I think this team can be a really good basketball team.
Yeah.
But since then, they're not anywhere close to where they will be. But I can tell you this, Bob, you'd much rather be this way last year, they spread out to, I don't know what they're rating. They got to number one in the country at one point, right?
Mm-hmm.
11-1, 12-1. I don't know about you, and I knew they were good last year, but I thought to myself, they're not the best team in the country. I know they're ranked number one.
Yeah.
They're going to come down to some reality, and they did a little bit in the SEC. Maybe this team will be the opposite of that, but they got to grow, and I think they will grow. How many teams has he had, Rick Barnes, that didn't grow and didn't gel and didn't get better playing together?
Yeah, people forget just 2 seasons ago, they lost 3 games in a row between Maui, and then they went to North Carolina and Chapel Hill and got absolutely murdered up there and made it to the Elite Eight. So, yeah, I still – all's not lost with this team. But it's some of the things you touched on, Chris. I mean, first of all, Jacoby Gillespie, Nate Ament in that game against Illinois, they combined to shoot 10 of 34 from the field. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the rest of the Vols shot nearly 50% for the game. And that's key. I mean, those are the things we have to think about is, like you said, getting those guys some more help. We've heard all the stories about the off-season workouts with how well these guys shot in, contact practice and scrimmages. We just got to see more of that. And I do believe with Nate, it will come with time. And it's funny. Mm-hmm. He's now, in the eyes of some fans, I'm hearing now he's a $5 million guy, and it's like, whatever we're paying him continues to conflate more and more. It just cracks me up. Felix Akpara, 1 of 6 from the line last night. That just is not acceptable, man. Yeah. That's the thing. These guys have lost the script, in my opinion, on controlling the controllables, which is rare to see a Barnes team make so many boneheaded mistakes. They had twice as many turnovers last night as Illinois. They missed so many shots. They missed so many free throws. Like you said, the perimeter defense was in some instances non-existent last night, and you don't see that normally with a Barnes team. That's got to be killing Rick.
And they lost 2 of the best defensive players in college basketball. I'm not making excuses.
Sure.
But Meshack and Zakai made life hell.
Right.
For other teams on the perimeter. I mean, I don't care who you talk to. You talk to Bruce Pearl, you talk to Nate Oates, they'll tell you those guys were a nightmare to have to go against. And, you don't just replace that type of defensive production overnight. It takes a while. And I think we're seeing that. People talk about losing Zakai on offense and how he ran the team. I mean, he played 10 years.
Yeah.
The only 2 players, I always joke, the only 2 players at Tennessee, the only player who played longer at Tennessee, and I'm being facetious here, was Grunfeld. I think Grunfeld played 8 or 9 years at Tennessee. and you just don't replace that type of production defensively overnight. It's going to take them, but they have to, Bob. They got to get better out on the front end defensively.
No, there's no doubt. I mean, and Jimmy Dykes nailed it last night. You were covering the football game, but I was watching the basketball game. And he was saying, and it was part of Illinois' game plan, but this is what you have to prepare for, is that they would, particularly in transition, they would flare guys out all over the place. And what it was doing, it was almost like creating confusion for Tennessee in terms of who their man was, and there just wasn't communication switching. Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, you've got a guy for Illinois spotting up wide open on the perimeter. Nate Ament was not the best freshman on the floor last night. Keaton Wagler of Illinois was fantastic. 6'6" kid who was hardly recruited, but he had 16 points last night. He's a good player. So there were a lot of things that were frustrating to watch. And you know what? It's showing in some of the metrics, like the net rankings have come out. Tennessee, the latest version, they plummeted to 34th place. They've also slipped to number 17 in KenPom rankings, which is typically KenPom's where the Vols are almost a staple in the top 10. So this is after a stirring and impressive win over Houston. They blow a chance to get some quad 1 wins. And now I'd say what needs to change. These guys have about 9 or 10 days before top 10 Louisville rolls into town. Now, I don't want to sound the alarm and say this is a must-win game, but it's pretty important in my mind, Chris, to the psyche of this team, like how they're going to prepare to go into the SEC, because we know that's going to be tough as hell.
Yeah, well, and it's having that time off after you're coming off some tough losses can go 1 or 2 ways as far as working on you mentally and emotionally.
Yeah.
And I know Rick I don't want to speak for him, but I know he wants to see this team play 40 minutes of basketball closer to what he's seen in practice, and be a much, much better version of themselves. They haven't been that for They were against Houston.
Yeah.
They were against Rutgers. I mean, again, I don't know how good Rutgers is, but
They
that was
were
one of those games.
They were for a half against Kansas too.
Yeah, they were, and that was one of those games where Gillespie just was lights out.
Yeah.
When he shoots the ball like that, Tennessee will be tough, be tough to beat. But by and large, over the last 3 games, they just haven't been close to the best version of I know what Rick thinks they can be. And I think more than anything now as they get ready, as you point out, they've got, 10 days to get ready.
Yeah.
Playing at home. Tennessee has been just, under him, have been just really, really good at home.
Yeah.
How they respond. I think how does this team respond? And do they play smarter? Do they play more together? Do they do the things? I think they really need to play a little bit more inside out. They got it. Estrella should be healthier with that much time. Get some of those guys some touches inside. Get some teams in foul trouble. Not put so much pressure on Gillespie to score 24, 25 points or aim it to score 21, 22, or 23 points. And I think those are things I know that they've worked on and will continue to work on, and will sort of be better at realizing and finding what their identity is as they get ready to go into the SEC.
Yeah. Yeah, they better be ready. I mean, Louisville, I watched some of them against Indiana yesterday. They're one of many teams that are on a given run or Final Four good. They are a very, very good team. Not like their other team across the state in Lexington. They're strong. So it could always be worse, right?
Yeah. No, it'll be good. It'll be good to see Tennessee. For Tennessee, if you look at it through Tennessee's lens, I'd much rather, if I'm Rick Barnes and that team, come back and play somebody like Louisville than have 2 or 3 more cupcakes to play.
Oh yeah, I'm with you there. All right, my man. I think we've wrapped up another one for this week. Appreciate you as always, Chris, doing your part here. I love hearing what your thoughts are on all this stuff because you are a very sage expert on this stuff.
I don't know. Expert in my own mind, maybe.
Yeah,
but it's a lot of fun. I look forward to Sundays. It's just sort of breaking it down, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about as we go forward, as we get Tennessee Louisville in Tennessee's bowl game, and what the staff looks like. Are there indeed some changes? And I'm really going to be interested, Bob, to see who plays in this game.
Yep.
For Tennessee, who does and who doesn't. Is probably the better way of putting it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you, and as always, we appreciate many thanks go out to our great sponsor, the Tate Insurance Group. For all of you out there watching and listening, make sure you like and subscribe the show on YouTube, the Rocky Top Insider channel. Download our podcast wherever you listen to your pods. We appreciate you all being a part of the show. Chris, have a great week ahead, my friend. I'll see you next week. And we look forward to joining all of you right here again next time on the RTI Lowdown.